All right, hello, Mr. Biggers here, and today we are working out of Reveal curriculum for Algebra 1. We are on Module 2, Day 1, and today we're going to be talking about solving one-step equations. So if you have the guided notes in front of you, what I'd like you to do is put your name on it, and the date, and the period, okay? So we're going to jump right in. To solve an equation means to find the value of a variable, okay? Okay, so to solve an equation means to find the value of the variable. This could also be called solving for the variable. Okay, now variables are unknown values in math. So these are unknown values. And just to recap, some examples could be an x, a y, a z, w, k, l, and the list goes on. Any of those things in math are variables, okay? So a variable is an unknown value that we have to solve for. So when we are doing these problems, solving these equations, the solution would be the answer to an equation. For example, y plus 2 equals 3 has the solution of 1. But how? So I'm going to show you how really quick over here. So I have y plus 2 is equal to 3. Okay, now our goal here is going to be to solve for our variable, which means at the end of the day, I want this guy and I want to figure out what he is. Okay, to do that, I need to set up an equation. So I'm going to draw a line right down the middle through my equal sign, and I have two sides of my equation. I've got this side and I've got this side. I want to pick a side to get my variable on, and I want to pick a side to get everything else on, okay? So I want my variable to be on my left side here since it's already there, okay? So this is where we have to think about opposite operations. So I have a y, and I'm adding 2 to it, okay? So I have to get rid of adding 2, and how can I do that? The opposite of adding a 2 would be to subtract a 2. Okay, so I have to subtract a 2 to this side. Now, the important thing about solving these equations, and this is why I draw the line down the middle, is because if you do something to this side of the equation, you also must do it to the other side of the equation. Okay, so if I have a positive 2 and then I subtract 2, that's going to cancel out. The whole goal is to get rid of that 2. So that way we are just left with our friend, our y. Okay? Now on the other side, this is easy as pie. You just do 3 minus 2. What is 3 minus 2? Okay, that's 1. So we get a solution of y is equal to 1. So that is how you can solve for this one. And the answer would be known as a solution. Okay? So anytime we're solving an equation, our goal is to get the variable or the letter on one side of the equation so we can find its value. That is exactly what we did here. We got the variable on one side of the equation and we got all of the numbers on the other side of the equation. So this is where we have to talk about operations and their opposites. So if I have multiplication, the opposite or the inverse of multiplication is division. Okay? So these two are opposites, okay? So they would cancel each other out, all right? So if I'm adding something, the opposite of adding is subtracting, okay? So these would be opposites in their own respects as well, okay? So just for some notes off to the side here, if I have a negative 2, the opposite would be a positive 2. If I have a divide by 3, the opposite would be a times 3, okay? So you have to do the opposite of whatever's going on to get rid of a number. So we're going to talk about that, okay? So just have this written down because knowing your opposite operations is important, okay? So we're going to jump into example 1 here. I need to solve by adding. And why do we have to solve by adding? We're going to see. So the first step I do is I draw my line down the middle of my equation. So that way I can start to think about balancing this out. The second thing I do, I circle my variable because I know at the end of the problem, that is what I need to find what it's equal to, okay? So I'm looking here at the problem, and next to the g, I have a minus 25. So this is where I'm going to look over here at my opposite operations. So if I have a negative 25, I need to then add 25 to get rid of it. So to cancel out that negative 25, I'm going to add 25 to both sides because what you do to one side, you must do to the other side, okay? Negative 25 plus 25 cancels out, and you are left with g, which is what we wanted by itself, is equal to 113 plus 25. Doing that in my calculator, and I get 138. If you have your variable on one side and a number on the other side, you're done. That is your solution. Boom. So g is equal to 138. Okay, so we're going to practice with example 2. Okay, so we need to solve by subtracting. And why do we have to solve by subtracting? Okay, well, if we zoom in and we look at this 27, it doesn't have a negative in front of it, which means that it's positive. Okay, and so this is where we have to go over here and look at our opposite operations. The opposite of adding a 27 would be to subtract it, okay? So if I have a plus 27 over here, I've got to minus 27 to get rid of it. So I'm going to minus 27 from this side and this side, because what you do to this side, you must do to this side as well, okay? So at the end of the problem, I want to know what k is equal to, okay? So if I take away 27 from this side, that's going to cancel out. And then 30 minus 27 is equal to 3. Okay? The k will come down in the problem. And if we're left with just k on one side, then we know we're done. K is equal to 3. Okay? We're going to go ahead and do the check for example 1 and example 2. So this one here, I'm going to set up my equation. I'm circling the variable they want me to solve for. Okay, now I'm thinking opposite operations. So I have y minus 3 here. The opposite of subtracting 3 would be to add 3, okay? And I must add 3 over here if I did it over here, okay? Because what you do to one side, you must do to the other. So then you will have y is equal to 97 plus 3 is 100, okay? So that is how you can do that one. We're going to do example 2. I've got a plus 26 equals 35. I'm going to draw my line. I know my a is the variable that I'm looking for to get by itself. If I'm adding a 26 to a, I know I have to take away 26 to get rid of it. Okay, 26 minus 26, gone. It cancels out. And then I have 35 minus 26, which if we solve that out, you would get 9. So I have a is equal to 9. Boom. That's your answer for that one. Okay, so that is how you can solve equations either by adding or subtracting. Now we're going to talk about multiplying and dividing, okay? So example 3 is a tricky one, okay? So I have a fraction. So to get rid of a fraction, I want you to write this down. To get rid of a fraction multiplier, you must multiply by the reciprocal, okay? So you have to multiply by the reciprocal. So what does it mean to multiply by the reciprocal? So if I have 3/8, the reciprocal would be 8/3. Okay? All it does is flip the fraction. That is the reciprocal. If I told you I had a fraction of 1/5, the reciprocal would be 5/1. Okay? So that's what a reciprocal is. So I want you to write this word with me. You got to multiply by the reciprocal. Okay? So over here, I have a 3/8 right next to my letter. So if it's right next to my variable, I know it's being multiplied. Okay? So we're going to do our same step as what we did up front. I'm going to draw my line down my equation to balance it out. And I know I need to get x by itself. To do that, we must multiply by the reciprocal. What is the reciprocal of 3/8? This is easy peasy. It's just 8/3. Okay? What you do to one side, you must also do to the other side. Okay? So this is going to get rid of your fraction on the left side. Okay? Fractions are gone. You are just left with x. Okay? And on the other side, you have 9/4, 9/4 times 8/3. Okay, so if you're doing this by hand on the top, you would do 9 times 8 equals 72 over 4 times 3 equals 12. So 72 over 12 would be 6. Okay, so that is how you can solve when you are multiplying by a fraction. So to get rid of a fraction multiplier, you must multiply by the reciprocal. That is important. Here's some more practice with reciprocals. If I had 2/5, the reciprocal would be 5/2. If I had 7/9, the reciprocal is going to be 9/7. Okay? So this is how you can cancel out the fractions. Why do they cancel out? Why do they work? Well, if you do 7 times 9 over 7 times 9, they're the same exact thing. Okay, so it would just be 1, so it cancels out. So that's why we multiply by the reciprocal. Okay, fancy word here, but all you need to know is it flips the fraction around to get rid of it. Okay, we're going to go here to example 4. We need to solve by multiplying and dividing. So what do I need to do here? Set up my equation. I'm looking for y by itself. I have a 6 being multiplied to it. I'm thinking opposite operations, okay? So opposite of multiplying is to divide. So I'm multiplying the 6 to the y, which means I need to divide by 6 to get rid of it. And I also need to do it to this side. So 6 divided by 6 is 1. So I just have 1y is equal to 54 divided by 6, which is 9. Easy peasy. Okay? Opposite operations. Opposite of multiplication is division. All right, this one here, this is another reciprocal problem. I have a fraction, okay? How do I get rid of a fraction being multiplied to a variable? I need to multiply by the reciprocal, okay? And I'm going to circle my variable because I know that's what I need by itself. So if I do that over here, cancels out. So I multiplied by 5/3 on that side, which means I also have to do it on this side. So then I would get Q is equal to, I technically have negative 15 over 1 times 5/3. When you multiply fractions, you multiply straight across. So negative 15 times 5 would be negative 75, and 1 times 3 is 3. So 75 divided by 3 would be equal to 25. And don't forget, I have a negative here, which means my answer is going to be negative. So Q would be equal to negative 25. All right, we solve that one by multiplying by the reciprocal. This one, okay, we are going to draw our line. I know I need to find C by itself. So if we look here, I have C over 4, which in other words tells me that I have C divided by 4. The opposite of dividing by 4 is to multiply by 4, okay? And that will cancel out the 4. So I need to multiply by 4 on this side, and I need to multiply by 4 on this side, okay? So that's going to cancel out. I'm left with C is equal to negative 9 times 4 over 8 times 1. Why did I do that? Well, I know 4 over 1 is the same thing as 4. And in fractions, I know I just multiply straight across. So 9 times 4 is 36. Over 8 times 1 is 8. And then we can simplify that further because we know 36 divided by 8 is 4.5. So C equals 4.5. All right. So that would be your answer. But don't forget, I have a negative out in front here, which means it's going to be over here and here. Okay? So your variable there is C equals 4.5. So that's the notes. Make sure you have all of that copied down. And then you have some practice problems here for you to try. What I will warn you on your practice problems is be careful of your negative. Okay? So what I would do is I would rewrite the problem. For example, number 7. If I have minus negative f, that is the same thing as saying 18 plus f equals 91. And then from there, you can solve by setting up your equation. You know you have a positive 18, so to solve for that, you would have to subtract 18 from both sides. Just looking at the other problems, it does not look like you have to use any reciprocal questions on here, which is good for you. But be careful with those double negatives, okay? If you're subtracting a negative, it's the same thing as adding, all right? So pause the video, rewind if you have any questions, and I will do my best to help you as I can, all right? Thank you.